City Council, Monday, November 19th, 2018. If you have a cell phone, I ask that you place it on silent. I call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Domingo, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Barnes. Reed. Here. Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Are there no presentations or public hearings? We'll proceed to public comment. Persons addressing the City Council, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum and state your name and address. These comments are for agenda items only. Are there any public comments this evening on the agenda? Oh, yeah, just please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, community members here tonight, and those watching at home on the streaming video. I'm Mayor-elect Dave Atchison. I reside at 108 West Erie Street. Reviewing tonight's agenda, one is struck with a sense of deja vu. I note agenda items A through D appear to be a redo from last week's 14 November special meeting. I congratulate the council and the mayor for making efforts to not only afford all of our precincts to have representation, but to correct the error of holding a public meeting in violation of the Open Meeting Act. Regarding Resolution 2018-08, Code of Ethics, the ordinance as written is flawed. There are no due process procedures and no safeguards against false accusations. The focus of our council's ethics ordinance should be to improve ethical conduct. Rather, this ordinance focuses almost entirely on punitive measures. Regarding Resolution 2018-27, financial review of candidates for elected offices, would the council please clarify this evening if the application or intent is to disqualify candidates before an election? Perhaps our community would be better served if the screening for financial default included an annual screening in February and the process be applied to all elected and appointed city officials to ensure no one in default is inappropriately serving in an elected capacity or in city positions. Regarding the proposed amendment to the city manager's contract, since the city manager has already relocated to Albion from Illinois, it is unclear why this amendment is required or even being sought. Therefore, will the council and or the city manager please clarify what conditions beyond her control have occurred to warrant a contract amendment? Also, will council please clarify whether the amendment will simply provide an extra 45 days to file receipts, or will the amendment authorize reimbursements for expenses which actually occur on days 46 through 90? Further, will the council and city manager clarify whether or not additional reimbursements above the existing $6,500 limit in the current contract will be authorized? I draw your attention to the actual language in the memo submitted by the city manager on 13 November. Is the city manager seeking reimbursement for moving expenses which include daily temporary lodging, meals, incidental expenses, security deposits, etc.? And lastly, the Project Rising Tide Fellowship MOU is somewhat problematic for a host of reasons, which I have outlined to Councilmember French and Councilmember Reed. I ask they consider those 13 issues and concerns I've identified and bring them up during council's discussion and debate tonight. Suffice it to say, the scope and extent of these 13 concerns would suggest the MOU for Phase 2 of Project Rising Tides should be a matter for the incoming council, who will oversee Phase 2 in its entirety. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Nancy McFarland. I live at 104 Lakewood Drive, Battleship, Michigan. I am a consultant for the Calhoun County Trailway Alliance, which is a volunteer group of people who are working to get a trail built across Calhoun County. And I'm here to thank you for the resolution to approve the grant from the Michigan Trust Fund to extend your existing trail system. And I want to thank Albion because you are the most progressive community in Calhoun County when it comes to trails. You have done the most projects and built the most trails, and now you have a development project south of town with a large trailhead that will really enhance the trail system. For those of you who do not know, the trail in Calhoun County, including the portion of trail in the city of Albion, will eventually go from Port Huron to South Haven, and that trail is called the Great Lake to Lake Trail. There's another trail called the Iron Bell Trail that will go from Belle Isle to Ironwood in the UP. And then there's an existing trail that runs through Calhoun County, which is called the North Country National Scenic Trail. All three of those trails converge in Calhoun County, so we're a really important trail hub. And I want to thank you all for your progressiveness when it comes to trails and the community and all the things that you do, and thank you for serving on the City Council.
Are there any further comments this evening on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to items for individual discussion. There's nothing under consent calendar. We'll move on to items for individual discussion. Item A, request approval for second reading and adoption of ordinance 2018-08 Code of Ethics. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Moved and supported. Attorney Harkness, can you clarify, this I guess applies to items A through, probably A through C.
Yeah, so I'll just give a brief overview. The reason the council has these on the agenda again is subsequent to the special meeting that we had last week. It was determined that there was a technical violation of the Open Meetings Act in that the notice had not been posted on the city's website. I don't think that it necessarily would invalidate the actions taken at council, because I don't believe that the non-compliance interfered with the rights of the public under the Open Meetings Act. Nevertheless, as a matter of, I think, transparency and as a matter of wanting to ensure compliance, these matters were placed back on the agenda for this week's meeting. You have before you a detailed memorandum regarding this issue that is subject to the attorney-client privilege, but if you have any individual questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them after the meeting.
Thank you. Regarding the second reading adoption, we had a study session on this. This has come to council for multiple discussions. It was approved, I believe, on the first reading 6-1. So is there any further discussion? Okay. Oh, Attorney Harkness.
One point of clarification. On page 4, item 7, it says a violation by 3/5 vote. The way that it's set up, and hypothetically, if you have a body of 7 with everybody there, obviously the individual that's the subject of the ethics violation would not be voting on it. So in this case, 3/5 is actually a majority vote. So I was just asking you to correct that to say majority. It does not change the number of votes that would be required, whether it's 3/5 of the 6 or whether it's 4 out of the 6. It would be a majority vote.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Rather than a simple majority, I would ask for a supermajority. Simply because, given the current structure of the council and the way the council's been in my 8 years, things tend to be voted 4-3. And so I would prefer it to be a 5/6 instead of 4/6. But I would consider that a friendly amendment for a conversation. And I know this is the second reading, but it's certainly something we can still address.
So there's a motion to amendment. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out, we have had 4-3 votes. We've had more 7-0 votes than anything else, though. So I want that to be noted.
Is there any discussion? Okay. We're going to have a roll call vote on the amendment, and this is to change it to, well, before we do that, I'm going to be really frank. At the end of the day, there's 7 council people, and whether it's 7-0-6-1-5-2-4-3, that's the democratic process. And I don't think, as we saw in the past couple of months, and there was allegations of coalition, but what I saw was an attempt to make a coalition during the past couple of months that would reverse the supposed or alleged coalition right now. So I think that it's disingenuous to say a 4-3 vote is somehow less reflective of the community than a 7-0 vote. So I'm going to be voting no on that. I think that built into this process is an opportunity for a public hearing, and there's always recourse to the circuit court. So this is to keep, as I said at our last special meeting, I've also been on council for 8 years, and I know council's been subject to outbursts by members, really a behavior that's unbecoming of council members. And so I think that this will go to strengthen transparency and allow council to be able to do its business uninterrupted by the kinds of showboating and disruptions that we've seen, especially in the past 2 years, from one particular of our colleagues. So the citizens and the council should not be subjected to that. And so I ask that, me personally, I'm going to be voting no on this amendment. Is there any further, Attorney Harkness?
Just one point of clarification, Mayor. You referenced the circuit court. If it's a civil penalty, the appeal would be to the district court.
Okay.
However, if it's something more severe than that, it would go to the circuit court.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Clerk Domingo, I ask for a roll call vote. This is to approve Councilmember French's amendment to raise it from a majority of council to not a supermajority, a 2/3 majority of council.
Oh, 5/6.
Oh, you were changing the language or the amount of?
So 2/3 with only 6 voting is 4 votes.
Okay.
I'm asking 5/6.
Oh, okay.
Then it's because
Okay.
member 1 is not.
Yeah. Yes. Did you have a?
You can wait until after the vote on the main question.
Okay. So we're voting on Councilmember French's amendment. Did you?
So just to be clear, do you want me to put the 5-6 or the supermajority?
Oh, this is just a vote on his amendment to raise it.
To a
5-6 would be a super.
Yeah.
Okay, so does it,
Doesn't matter which way you word it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes, Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
No.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
No. The amendment failed. We're back to the main motion to approve the Code of Ethics. Are there any other amendments or discussion? Attorney Harkness.
So this is not to the substantive body of the ordinance. This just happened because this didn't get taken up at the anticipated time. The first reading should reflect the date that we had our first reading. I'm not sure if that's it was October 15th. Okay. The second reading then should reflect
On the signature page, yeah.
November. It does reflect November 19th.
Right.
And then 30 days up. You know what? Oh, the effect, yeah, no, never mind. I'm an attorney, my math is off.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'd ask for a roll call vote on the approval of the second reading of the Code of Ethics.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Item B, request to approve Resolution 2018-27, review of financial qualifications for candidates of elected office. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Attorney Harkness.
Sure. So what you've got before you is a resolution that basically outlines that it's been the city's past practice to screen either appointed board members or elected officials to determine whether or not they're in default to the city. This has traditionally happened after the appointment, but before taking office, and after election, but before taking office. Both in past years and present years, this has become an issue, and so it's just a statement of policy indicating that this should be done after the city receives valid nominating petitions. That screening occurs within 2 weeks of that process, and then we provide the individual with notice of the results. It's left open-ended so as not to make any specific direction to any specific staff member. Rather, the manager can assign that task to whoever's best suited to do that.
And as we begin discussion, this wouldn't affect someone's eligibility to run
Correct.
for the office.
Correct.
It just would give them at least probably around 4 months to fix any delinquent issues, whether that's utilities or income tax or property tax.
Correct.
Debt to the city. Is there any discussion from the council? Councilmember French.
So I'm curious to know why we're not placing the responsibility of what people owe for taxes upon the candidate themselves, rather than shepherding them through that process. Presumably, people who are running for office would know their financial situation with respect to the city, and that would be something that they would look into before they even sought election. Am I missing something?
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I said last week, we discussed this back in 2016 when we were first elected. So this is not the first time this issue has come up for a discussion. I want to say I remember us addressing this last time. I can't remember whether or not we actually adopted a resolution, but I know the discussion took place that we felt, a consensus of council felt like this is something that should be brought to the person's attention way early on in the game. So this is not just coming out of the blue. This is something we talked about 2 years ago. So I don't see anything wrong with putting something in place that clearly speaks to a process to address this. It happens.
What I'd also say is, one of the things I've been really proud about my tenure on council is to try to reach out to individuals in the community and make sure that we have a broad base of public input in our boards and commissions. And I think what ends up happening is if someone has not been involved with the process for a while, they're not aware of all the ins and outs. And so I think this makes it easier for people who are interested in serving the city in these various capacities to do that. We currently, as Attorney Harkness mentioned, if someone applies to a board, if they get that information, I think it should also apply to the council. So it doesn't disqualify from anyone from running, and it gives them time to fix that. Later on I'll have some comments directed towards this issue in this particular situation, but I'm trying to find the fault in the resolution. Did you have your hands up?
I'll speak after you.
Councilman French.
I'm not in opposition to this resolution at all. Maybe I should ask a different question. What is the policy and procedure for informing citizens of our city that they are delinquent in their taxes?
I'll respond. Do you have... Okay. Currently, right now, the council approved, well, let me back up for citizens. Albion's one of 22 cities in the state with an income tax, a local income tax, okay? And so normally you have withholdings for federal and for state taxes. The city really hasn't had the power to do that. So what ends up happening is there are some employers who do that, some don't, and so it falls on residents to figure it out. I can't account for the intentions of every single resident, what happens whether they willfully or don't file income taxes, but what the council did do in the budget for this year was set aside a certain amount of money to contract with, I believe it's an innovative software out of Eaton Rapids, to help us collect past due delinquent income tax and then also help us to process that going forward. And so I know there have been attempts to reach those with letters. I know those things have gone out. I can't, that's administrative. I don't know if our finance director is here. Is he still here? Yes. Could you speak very briefly, Director Mead, to the city's efforts to collect delinquent income tax.
Sure. Finance Director Tom Mead. The way this is working, we have the ability through this other company that does this type of service for municipalities all over the state. And what they're able to do, they are able to go to the state and look at individuals who filed state of Michigan returns, and they can, using their database, they can hone in on the addresses and stuff that are within the city limits. So theoretically, anyone who files a return with the state of Michigan and lives within the city, resides within the city, therefore should be filing a City of Albion return, because if you had income to report to the state, that income should also be reported to the city. The difficult thing with income tax is if you don't have that other database to check, you know, you're kind of relying on employers or good faith effort of people to just file on their own. Some people, I think a lot of people probably, it's not just an issue of not wanting to file, it could simply be not being aware. Albion is one of the smaller communities in the state that has income tax. So to a lot of people, especially if they're, you know, from the surrounding areas, some of these even smaller communities move into Albion or come here and work in Albion, some of them may not even be aware of it. But what we're trying to do is using technology through these databases to, you know, link up which one should be filing, and therefore sending letters out and making them aware and asking them to file. And
Thank you,
that
Tom.
answered.
Attorney Harkness.
I would add, in addition to what Mr. Mead just said, is in extreme cases, we have also charged people criminally with non-filing, non-payment of tax.
Correct. Yeah. And actually, it is, I think the way it was written, it's interesting. It's almost a greater offense to not file than to file and not be able to pay timely. I mean, that we can work with people, and but like Attorney Harkness indicated, the way the law is written, if they just choose to blatantly not file, we do actually have the power to issue warrants in those situations, and we have in the past. So.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to say, there's no reason for us not to adopt this resolution. That's what great leaders do. They come across a problem, they identify the problem, and they don't just sweep it under the rug for the next group of leaders to address. They address it head on, so the people coming behind them don't have to deal with what they've already been made aware of. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved Resolution 2018-27. Item C, request approval of city manager contract amendment relative to moving city expenses. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay. Would you like to explain? Okay. Kellen, would you like to?
Sure. So it's my understanding that the manager is not, there's a memo in the packet that references additional costs. It's my understanding that the manager is just requesting the extension of time to turn in verification of expense through receipts from 45 days to 90 days. I have prepared an addendum to the employment agreement that reflects the change to that section. That did not make it in the packet, but it is just says that, and that's essentially it.
Okay. Is there any discussion from council? Councilmember French.
So the new language reads,
The new language reads as follows. Should the city manager establish residency within the city will pay to the city manager a one-time sum not to exceed $6,500 for moving expenses. The city manager will be issued a check in advance, provide receipts to verify her moving expenditures, and will refund to the city any unused funds within 90 days of the date of this agreement. and the only change was that previous section, which was section 14B, used to say 45 days of the agreement, now it says 90 days.
Okay.
Is there any discussion from council? Okay. Seeing none, that's for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved that amendment to the contract. Item D, request approval attorney fees for council rule review. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So basically, we've had Attorney Smith work with us in January. I came and did a review of the role of mayor, council, and manager. Then we came back, had a meeting, a thorough go-through with the council with the rules of procedure. And then also, there have been some conversations with Attorney Harkness and myself and Attorney Smith. And so what we're doing now is, I think the council initially allocated, what was it 1,200? And the one question I had was the 1,500. Was that from the meeting in January?
The first
Yeah.
payment was it earlier?
Okay, so that's not included. Okay. And so there's a breakdown, and I don't have this. Yeah. Because the 15 was in January. Right?
Do you want, yeah, so you just want me to take that off?
Yeah, just it'd be the 3,000.
Yeah, just less, just the,
Yeah. So,
We don't have numbers.
3980.
okay.
Thank you.
We're raising to approve that because we budgeted the 1,200, and then with the subsequent conversations and then the edits, because I believe Attorney Smith went back and systematically I don't say outline, but not numbered, but formatted the rules, and that was included. So we are already getting a discounted rate. So this would be to approve the 39. Can you read the number again?
Well, so the first 1,500 that you had was for the
January meeting.
rolls.
Okay.
So then you approved $1,200 for the rules review, so that leaves you $2,780
Okay.
over that.
Okay.
So
So you approve that amount?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a vacant stuff for that.
He's already come down. We basically have his revisions. There was one. Well, there were two suggested edits to the last version he gave. One was a question that was raised by our Director of Public Safety about should language be included for a sergeant at arms. So that's one outstanding question that he has to answer. And then the other question was, it came up actually in the meeting that we had the evening to select finalists for the city manager search, when one council member left and we didn't excuse the council member. So there was a question about how to handle those situations, and he recommended having a roll call at the beginning and the end. So those are the two things that he needed to add, and then we'll be ready to approve. So, is there any further discussion? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. One, what account will this money be coming from? It will be from the council, city council's budget.
Okay, yeah.
Love to know how much over we are this year with respect to that. And the second question is, how much of this charge is a result of personal conversations between you, Mayor, and him outside of meetings with the council? Did he break that down?
I haven't seen the invoices.
I do.
So we're approving without invoices.
No, we have the.
There are invoices.
Oh, they're just not itemized.
No, they probably are. I have not seen anything for the total.
Yeah.
I have not seen the individual they weren't available immediately before the meeting.
And when we've spoken to him, it's been with the three of us, because the attorney, Attorney Harkness, myself, and Scott Smith.
Right.
So, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Attorney Scott Smith came to Albion, not by request of the mayor, but I know council agreed to bring him here. He was found by Councilmember Reed and our former city our former city manager. So we agreed as a council that his work was very important. So I think he's done an excellent job of outlining council roles, mayor role, city manager role. It was much needed, much appreciated, and he did excellent. So I would like to finalize utilizing Attorney Smith so we can finalize these council rules and we can move our council forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And then one thing I remember, when the council just approved the Code of Ordinances, there is a section in there that's going to require, after each, biannual election or sitting of council, some kind of formal training, whether it's from MML or a equally qualified entity to, within 60 days, I believe, of the setting of the council, to kind of go over those roles. So again, to echo what Councilmember Brown said, I don't want any council ever to have to go through what I went through. And I think that we will be laying a foundation for a basic understanding of how the government works. So with that, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we approved the attorney fees for the council rules review. Request Project Rising Tide, item E, request approval of Project Rising Tide Fellow Agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Just want to explain. Oh.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So about 2 Fridays ago, we interviewed for our fellow candidates here in Albion. I'm happy to announce that we decided to go with Linda Lanou. She will be our new fellow for Albion area. She will be attending a fellowship orientation and kickoff in Lansing on December 3rd and 4th, with her first day scheduled to be December 5th. We'll have more discussions on her transitioning into City Hall. Before you, the agreement is CEDM is providing a stipend of $2,000 to all host communities to choose to spend however they see fit. So we wanted to provide that to the council to review and, I guess, decide what we do with that stipend. That's it.
Okay. Any discussion, Councilmember French?
Thank you. Excellent choice. I think I speak for the entire council that excellent choice in the person. We don't need to decide how that $2,000 is spent at this meeting. My guess is that there'll be expenses that Ms. Lanou will incur in having community events, perhaps refreshments or space and things like that. So I think that as long as we don't have to make that decision now, I think we would rely on Ms. Lanou to help us decide how that money should be spent.
I would agree. Yeah, it's nothing, I guess, you don't have to decide tonight, but just wanted to present that to you so you had that info and want to provide your input.
Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Just out of curiosity,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder, who was a part of the hiring committee that chose Ms. Lanou?
It was myself, Chief Kip, and then Sarah, it's not Sarah Teeter, it was her supervisor, and I apologize, I cannot think of her name offhand, but she was from CEDM. A representative from CEDM came down and we conducted the interviews.
Okay. Attorney Harkness and then Councilmember Brown.
I think there's just one typo that I'd ask that we correct at the very beginning. The first paragraph where it says between CEDAM client represented by Jamie Schreiner, and then it says and Latanya Rufus here and after referred to as a community. I think it should read and the city of Albion, comma, represented by Latanya Rufus here and after referred to as a community.
Is that substantive enough where we need an amendment? Is it substantive that we need an amendment?
We have to vote on it.
Oh,
No, no, I don't think so.
okay.
Yeah.
Are there any, yep, Councilmember Brown, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be on the safe side, I would like to move that we add that amendment to reflect the city of Albion represented by City Manager LaTanya Rufus and such.
I would support that.
There's been a motion and a support. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor of the amendment from Councilmember Brown, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, so we've approved the amendment. We have the main motion with the amendment. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved the Project Rising Tide Fellow Agreement. Item F, request approval, Resolution 2018-28, a resolution to approve the development project agreement with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and the City of Albion for the Albion River Trail Expansion Project.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support that.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? How many council people do you want to have anything? Oh, Councilmember French.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the hard work done by Mr. Greg Strand, the grant writer for this grant. He's been successful over the years in getting funding for an awful lot of projects related to the trails throughout Calhoun County, and he's done an outstanding job in bringing this yet another one to us for our approval. So I wanted to thank Greg publicly for that effort.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. Ms. Rufus, have you had an opportunity to look over this, and do you have any concerns regarding this?
Currently, I do not. Mainly Chief Kip, myself, we did, and Ms. Snyder, Ms. Domingo, we all met at different points of time. We did meet with Mr. Greg Strand, and we met with Mark Lilly in regards to this particular trail grant. And there is a match for the grant. It's the $85,000 match that has already been pre-approved through the Battle Creek Community Fund. And so that's where the match is coming from now. Chief, if you want to step up and say a couple words about this, but we've been working to ensure that we can possibly lower that amount. We haven't decided if we're going to use PA 51 funds or not, because those funds are utilized for non-motorized projects. Chief?
This grant was put in for 2 years ago, I believe, and then it was finally approved last spring. The real question was the matching funds and where the matching funds were going to come from. The Battle Creek Community Foundation had originally stated that they would match those funds for us, but that was when the original grant was put in, not when it was denied. We did get another $500,000 grant from MEDC to cover costs related to the overages at the wastewater plant on the SAW grant that we were working on. And then the remainder of that was to go to another project. Well, that project isn't capable of being done with those funds because it's not enough money to come anywhere close to what they wanted to do. And so the MEDC told us today in the conference call that we had that we could actually use the funds from that to match the trail fund. And there will be there's 170,000.
Go ahead.
So after the SAW grant funds overages are paid for, there's $170,000 left from the $500,000, and so that $85,000 to match the trail fund grant can be used from that, and the remaining funds can be used for other projects with the trailhead that have already been initiated or approved, and we were looking at possibly doing some parking areas in the park around the trailhead that we need some resurfacing on. But that would obviously come to council before we made that decision.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I understand we have a way to cover the match.
Right.
And you just talked about what's left over from the SAW grant. So am I correct in understanding that Battle Creek Community Foundation is not giving any money toward this?
I believe that is correct. I'm not sure. We haven't had that conversation with them since we found this out today.
Okay.
I know I talked to Greg Strand over the summer. He was working with them trying to figure out ways to come up with that money. But like I said, they weren't prepared to do it this year as a result of it being turned down last year, and they didn't expect we were going to get it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion from council? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed, and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved Resolution 2018-28 relative to the support of the Albion River Trail expansion project. Item G, request approval 2019 meeting dates. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The only discussion, I've talked to Attorney Harkness about this, we might, and this might come back hopefully maybe as an amendment to the resolution, but maybe finding a way to deal with those instances where, well, let me back up. We're required by the charter to have 2 meetings in a month, 2 regular meetings. And there are sometimes through inclement weather or potentially emergencies that might not happen, or there may not be any business. So hopefully we can find some mechanism there to allow the council, the mayor, or the manager to deal with those instances, because we're approving the dates, but I don't think any one individual has the power to cancel a meeting. So hopefully we can fix that, and that's not something we have to do right now. But
you can always amend this.
yeah. So, but this is just to set the dates, and this is required of us to do this. Are there any? Is there any discussion or questions? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll do some voice vote. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, we've approved the 2019 meeting dates. H, discussion, approval of setting initial city manager goals. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so per contract with the manager, within 45 days of her start date, we're supposed to set goals, and I believe the 45th day is this Thursday. So we want to make sure we do that, and these don't have to be the city's long-term goals. I believe there's going to be a goal-setting session hopefully in the new year, but this would give the manager some direction, especially relative to the initial evaluation. So let's see here, give me 1 second. What I thought about is how we can potentially use what's currently going on with the city, and kind of use that as a launching pad for the goals. And so I was thinking about structuring that in let's say a kind of a four-part or 4-category goals. So one would be administration and oversight, because I think that's something that the managers, that's the key component of her role. Infrastructure, I think that's something that's happening. We know that in 2019 we're going to have major repavements on Irwin and half of North Street. Neighborhoods, there's a lot of things going on. The city has a full-time code enforcement officer, so making sure that we're enhancing those efforts. And then there's a lot going around community and economic development. So those are kind of 4 areas where I think that it would be helpful for us to kind of think through tasking the manager with moving the city forward. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. Given that, as you mentioned, that other goal sessions will be had at the turn of the new administration, I would like us to focus on sort of more immediate needs that we would have. And I would say first and foremost, we need to provide our city manager with the appropriate training on what it means to be a city manager in the state of Michigan, that we connect her with leadership groups and support systems in the state so that she can feel that she's being supported in her efforts, not necessarily by folks in Albion, but folks at the state level. We have found that city managers that are connected to the MML directly through the city managers network that exists in the state of Michigan provides opportunities for learning and support that makes being a city manager relatively less stressful than it is if you're going it alone in the city. So I would say goal 1 for December and into January is to be connected to the Michigan Municipal League and to the city manager trainings that are available there and through the professional association that exists in the state of Michigan for city managers. Once that training has happened, then I think Ms. Rufus will be even more prepared to do an excellent job for our city.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm really trying to process what I just heard. Initially, I felt it to be an insult to say she needs more training to be a city manager, and maybe that's because I don't understand what you meant, but what I heard was what I heard was there's some flaw that she needs training to overcome in order to be an effective city manager. And I think Ms. Rufus has come in here and did an excellent job. She's only been here a month. I'm not opposed to training. I'm trying to process, I guess. And hearing some of the things that I've heard that she's been approached with, I just would urge everyone at this council table and in this community to support our city manager. I'm going to ask you, Ms. Rufus, to speak, if you wish. I don't want you to feel pressured on your thoughts or any plans you may have to connect with MML for training. But wow. I know our former city manager was very new to being a city manager when she came, and I wasn't on council when she came. But I don't know if that was one of the suggestions for her, was to go to training, and was it?
And we did.
Okay, well, that's great. I applaud that. But I'm going to ask Ms. Rufus to speak to whether or not you have plans or any connections you have to MML, only if you wish to. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Reed, and then I have a comment.
I guess evidently I don't know Mrs. Rufus as well as maybe some others on this board does. But I am in total agreement with what Andy says, because one thing, Michigan has different laws than Illinois does. And it's good that she would find out how Michigan works things as well as how Illinois works things. And plus, on top of that, from conversations that we have had, I would definitely say that would be a good idea.
So one comment, then back to Councilmember Brown. So in theory, I have no problem with that. I think every year the city assigns in our budget, there's a budget for the manager to get professional publications, to attend training. So that's normally the normal course of business, because as a manager and in public administration, things change all the time. The state's changing rules about lead regulations and water main or water infrastructure regulations. Those are changing. So I think that's assumed that the manager will be doing that anyways. So I don't have a problem with highlighting it, but that's assumed. In any role, you're going to have professional development. You're going to seek highest levels of excellency to keep yourself on top of your professional responsibilities. Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Reed.
Well, I remember last year when we all had the opportunity to go, and everybody who went said how much they learned from going. I mean, there's things that you weren't quite up on, or that you didn't know, or that had changed from how it was? Because I've been on the board 8 years too. But still, there's things that change that you don't know that is always good to know.
Can I ask for just a yield for a comment? Is that okay? Is that okay with you? Okay. So one thing I'm going to say, and I want to take Councilmember French's comments seriously, but we also want to make sure a lot of times there's distractions, okay? We know that the manager is going to, she's a member of the ICMA, and if there's any kind of requirement for membership from MML, she will do that. I think, to me, it appears as a distraction. It appears certainly kind of an underhanded slight at the manager. She has an MPA. She has the qualifications for a manager. And I think what's important is we assume that the manager is going to avail herself of professional development. So I have no problem with that being in the goals, but I'd rather much talk about what's going on in the city because there's lots of things that need to be handled. So Councilmember Brown or Spicer and then Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wanting to add that while we as council members did receive some professional development, it was way into our serving on council. And so I think that City Manager Rufus is not opposed to professional development. I do expect that she will get involved, but she has hit the ground running. She's been putting out fires since she got here and juggling many things. And so I don't think that we do not expect her to have professional development and that she is opposed to it. I think it's going to happen. I just don't think that given somebody has been here, 5 weeks, that it should be some type of slight negative remark or remark against her. So I think given time, she will get what she needs.
Did you have a Councilman Brown? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to make it clear that Ms. Rufus has been here, I think, 5 weeks. None of us on council knew her prior to her coming here. So I think we're all getting to know her. There isn't a advantage of knowing her longer than any other council member because none of us knew her before she came. So I just want to make that very clear and put that out there just to dispel any rumors or gossip that's floating throughout the community. Thank you.
Councilman French.
I must apologize. It was never my intention to slight.
Well, no. Councilmember French, go ahead.
Thank you. It was never my intention to slight our city manager in any way. I just think that that if we make that an emphasis, then our city manager who does the work on behalf of the council will make every effort to make that happen. And again, since another strategy session will be set probably in December, early January, that any goals that we say, I think our mayor has laid out 4 areas of work, which are the standard 4 areas of work for any city manager, infrastructure, and the like. And so I was just thinking that if we add the 5th one, that she will actively seek professional support. And I think about previous city managers, going back to Mike Herman, who found the Association with State of Michigan City Managers to be a supportive structure in which to participate. So being a city manager comes with headaches and difficulty and challenges, and finding a group of people to engage in conversation to learn the latest and most creative ways to solve problems is only to our advantage as a city. So I didn't suggest at all that she was unqualified to do the city manager job. I'm only pointing out that everyone does better with more training. So I apologize to Ms. Rufus if she felt like that I was somehow impugning her reputation. It was never my intention.
So here's my recommendation so we can be kind of, I have no problem. We'll add that. I know there's an MML conference coming up. I don't know if we'll make the deadline for that. But normally the city will pay for that anyways. So what I would add as a 5th thing is just acclimate yourself with the MML and I see no objection to that. Okay. You going?
Actually, Mayor, myself, Ms. Snyder, and Ms. Domingo signed up for training on December 11th in Lansing, so we've already started that process. So just know that I think that training is very important. I believe that I will be seeking additional training for all of our staff to ensure that they all can do their jobs much better. There is not enough money in the budget for training. Training has become very expensive. So just know that that is at the top of our list, and we have been talking about that with all of the staff members and our staff meetings. But yes, we are assigned for one training session, I know for sure, next month in Lansing.
Okay. So and we're just kind of drafting here, so I would agree with I would agree with Councilmember French that we could have a training as a 5th category, so we'll add that. I know the manager met with a number of the council members and some of the department heads, and I've had an opportunity to talk to the manager, and so a couple of things in prep for tonight's discussion I kind of listed out, and so I'm going to list them out, and I'd welcome remark from the council. So administration and oversight. So I said the manager to continue to review administrative policies and procedures to maximize customer service, safety, and efficiency. I know the manager's been working with staff to make some of those changes, so I think that continuing to do that would be an appropriate goal. And then also just to review staffing configurations. I know there have been staffing changes in the past 5 or 6 weeks, so making sure that the manager is allowed to kind of settle on how she wants that to be configured. So those would be 2 recommendations under administration oversight. In terms of infrastructure, what I would propose to council is to look at or assess kind of funding options for addressing sidewalks, street signs, street lighting. I know those are issues that have been relayed to me and relayed to many of us and the manager, not as a definitive solution, but just a review of what funding is available potentially to address those issues. Ongoing things, I'm a member currently of the EDC board, and there are other ways to think about infrastructure. I know there's been a lot of discussion about high-speed internet access in the downtown, and I know that that's something that I believe residents and the rest of the community would be interested in too. So again, just to kind of research and report on, an initial review of options for that, and I think that would be important. That wouldn't be a definitive plan for how we're going to finance and fund it, but to see what options are available. That is something that our neighboring community, Marshall, has, and they have some infrastructure opportunities that we don't, because they own, I believe, some of the posts for those wires. So, but just to research that, and then a third under infrastructure is to look at kind of local transportation. I know the county is working on that, but I think that's an issue as well. So let me pause. Under administration oversight, are there any objections to those? Councilmember French.
No objections per se, but I'm trying to figure out if we are setting initial city manager goals, what you've outlined is more than just initial. It's a multi-year city manager goal. And given that the administration is changing over in a month or 2 weeks, my question is, should we be thinking about more approachable goals that can be accomplished in the next, say, 6 months before her first evaluation, rather than planning and discussing goals that are universal for the city moving forward without consulting the new city council and the new mayor for their input?
Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think after 6 months, when Ms. Rufus is evaluated, council at that time can, well, actually, we'll have a goal-setting session, usually early year, to set the long-term goals, but when we evaluate in 6 months, we can kind of amend, modify, cater, address what we need to at that time.
And as one response, I'd say these are not long-term. That's why I preface them all saying, I preface all of that. I begin by saying just an initial review. So this could be as simple as sitting down with the city manager and marshal and saying, what funding options did you pursue, doing a review for other communities in the state, and coming back to council at a council meeting and saying, these are how 3 communities, similar to what our attorney did for the Code of Ethics. This is how Battle Creek did it, Allegan, Hamtramck, and this was something that might warrant further research. And when it comes up next year, the goal setting, the council can say, go ahead, explore it further. But I think we want to start it. And so this is not a multi-year obligation to the manager. So under administrative oversight, what the manager's already doing, I had those 2 things: review administrative policies and procedures, and then also review and modify administrative staffing configurations. Are there any objections to that? Okay. Infrastructure, like I said, just initial assessments of our sidewalk program, street signs, lighting, and then the high-speed internet and transportation. And those are just for initial reports to council. Is there any other infrastructure concerns? Okay. I had listed neighborhoods that came up. I know the council, I'm glad that we budgeted for a full-time code enforcement person. I know the manager has mentioned in conversation about making sure that there are certifications in a code enforcement office. So I think that what I wrote was kind of just to review and adjust the code enforcement efforts to maximize capacity. So it's a fancy way of saying continue to improve the code enforcement function of the city. And then are there any other neighborhood issues or concerns? Okay. Well, I'll put this out because this is one of the things that I'm interested in, and I'm welcome discussion because that's what we're here for. Councilman Schweitzer.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. And this may not even be for the city manager to do, but maybe perhaps in consultation with each individual council member. We had earlier this summer talked about and explored neighborhood planning councils, and we even met in the individual precincts. So I don't want that to fall by the wayside.
Okay. Very good point, actually. Okay.
I'm glad you did mention that. I will be working with the public safety officer and the staff because we are going to start having meetings in each one of the precincts. So we have not gotten those dates yet. So as soon as we get a chance to sit down and come up with dates, we will make sure that this council is aware of what those dates are and where. And I'll be reaching out to each councilman to find out what's the best place in your precinct to meet, where is the best place for your staff, your constituents to be able to see me, because I know that you all have meetings in your precinct, so I'll be asking just for assistance very near future for that.
So I think that's a great idea, and I would add that just to update yourself with the community or neighborhood council framework, and just give us a report of the status of that. So it's really just getting yourself up to date with these things. So I'd add that as under neighborhoods. And then the fourth was community and economic development. I know that, how do I say this? Hopefully, within the next year, there's going to be some major growth in our community, hopefully. And I think that with that, there needs to be, focus on what I call kind of community essentials, access to food care, child care, those kinds of things. So basically another thing, just kind of acclimating yourself. I know you've spoken to me about what's the national organization?
ICSC.
Okay.
It's called the International Council of Shopping Centers. There's a meeting that is held every year in May in Las Vegas, and they have thousands of retailers that come and look for communities just like Albion to move to so that we can bring positive development to our community. The one thing that's very important about that is Ms. Snyder and myself and the chief, we're working on bringing all of our subsidiary organizations together, the DDA, the ABA, Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, so that we all have the same framework, so that we can make sure that we're working together as a team to move the city forward. I know that there are state guidelines that we have to follow, and every particular subsidiary committee has to have their own plan. Just want to make sure that these plans are all cohesive and that we're working together to move Albion to the next level. One thing that retailers look at when they come to communities to see how cohesive it is, to see if we all are working together, to ensure that we all have the same sort of ideals when it comes to development. So we need to think about that. Our image is very important. How we view each other, how we view our communities, and there are some things that we need to do to ensure that our communities are going to be fit for new development. We have a lot of great development that's going on in town right now. I want to continue to be a part of that, continue to move forward. There have been a lot of great projects that have happened, and the only goal is so that we do them cohesively. So I will be working with each one of these organizations to ensure that Albion is moving forward together as one whole team. And that's really important. If we want good development in town, we have to make sure those are the things we want as an entire community. We do need to think about our housing stock in town. I took a tour, something very different that has not happened before. If the chief could step out, if you don't mind. We had a tour of the city as a team. The entire administrative team went. So, Chief, if you don't mind stepping forward for a second to talk about that. I know you're trying to two things at one time. And just if you guys could give Chief a couple minutes to kind of talk about the tour and what happened and how things went.
Well, as a group with the department heads, going out and touring the community and looking at some of the issues that we have in the community. As the chief of public safety, I get to get out and see the community more so on a regular basis than the other department heads get to. So it was good for us to get together and actually be able to go around, tour the community, look at some of the problems that Ms. Rufus has pointed out as concerns to her, and we were able to point out other concerns as well. John Tracy was able to point out things that we are working on currently, but it was significant, I think, for some of the other department heads that don't normally get out of City Hall to have the opportunity to go out and look at those things and see how we can work as a team to work on those. So.
Thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I think that just should be kind of an initial report back to council. And then also what I had written down was I know that there's a subcommittee of the Planning Commission that's updating the zoning ordinances. So that we can be, I guess, fully credentialed under the Redevelopment Ready Communities program of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, which is basically a set of rules so that we're at the front of the line when it comes to state funding. And so I would basically put that under community development, economic development, as just to review and kind of work with them to complete that. Absolutely. So as a summary, I'll read it back. Administration and oversight, two things: reviewing policies and procedures for customer service, safety, and efficiency, and then reviewing our staffing configuration. Infrastructure, looking at the sidewalks, street signs, street lighting, assessing an initial report. These are all kind of initial reporting on funding options. Research and reporting on the high-speed internet service, research and reporting on the transportation needs. And then under neighborhoods, we have basically working with code enforcement to enhance that. And then also, as Councilmember Spicer, which was a great thing mentioned, is kind of just filling yourself in and kind of reviving the effort behind the neighborhood planning councils. Community and economic development, basically looking at options for community development, those staples of grocery stores, retail. and then also working with the subcommittee on the planning commission with the zoning, and then fifth is just training, which is basically if there's some kind of credential you need to get through the MML and to attend some training. So are there any other suggestions for these initial goals for the manager that are contractual? Okay. I'd entertain a motion to make that as part of the approval of the main motion, what we just discussed, since there was no objection. This is an amendment just to make it clear that that's what we're saying. Councilmember Brown.
So I move to make the amendment to include the goals as outlined for the city manager for a 6-month review.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Councilmember French.
I think we can all recognize that these goals are subject to change at the change of the administration. So I would ask that we modify that to say that these are initial city goals pending potential modification with the arrival of the new council. That I would not make it contingent on our 6-month evaluation, because it may be that the new council has more significant or different goals for the city manager to accomplish.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to ask Attorney Harkness to speak to how that, what's in the contract, and how does Councilmember French's suggestion play into what we've agreed in the contract?
And I will add to that, one of the, while Attorney Harkness is researching that, I'll add a question for him to answer is, there's nothing in a democratic process that's set up for council that can't be undone by a future council, unless it's, there's some thing that we've obliged ourselves to do financially or something. Oh, okay. We have to buy you a Mac or something.
I don't drink the Kool-Aid.
It speaks to our need for better Wi-Fi.
It's my computer. It's not the Wi-Fi.
Come on, Colin, work with me. Work with our
I won't do the
English.
Mac thing, though. I refuse. Okay. The particular paragraph references within the first 45 days of the city manager's employment, the mayor and city council shall define such goals and performance objectives for the city manager, which they determine necessary for the proper operation of the city and the attainment of the city's policy objectives, and shall also establish a relative priority amongst the goals and objectives. The goals and objectives shall be reduced to writing. The goals and objectives shall be generally attainable within the time limitations as specified in annual operating and capital budgets and appropriations provided.
Right.
So, that being said, I think you can arguably tailor it to say these are your goals for the next 6 months, these are your goals for the next year. It's completely up to you. But, I mean, obviously you're going to be, depending upon how you word that, is going to depend upon whether at the 6-month mark you're evaluating the manager based on what's been accomplished, and you can say we outlined X, Y, and Z, and only part of it has been accomplished in 6 months, or you're going to say, if you get what I'm saying, if it's a long-term goal, how are you looking at it?
Right. Which is why I would like this to be evaluative in a shorter period of time, to allow our new city council and mayor to have input as to what are the goals and expectations of the city. And so the question is, Councilwoman Brown is asking, is what is an acceptable time frame?
Well, I have one question, though. The contract, as I understand it, can be modified at any time pursuant to the agreement of the council and the manager, correct? So when the council...
Well, the agreement between the 7 council members and the manager, both sides have to agree.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in the new year, when the goal setting happens, there can be agreement to add or subtract or do those kinds of things. So it's always, that's a possibility. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I read it, I mean, it's not as if there's never going to be new goals and new objectives. I think it can always be supplemented. I guess my thought would be, since the contract doesn't require you to tie it to any time frame, my suggestion would be that you follow the language of the contract and just you outline the goals and policy objectives that you want the manager to obtain in a general concept. Don't necessarily tie it to any time frame, whether short or long, and then at the 6 and 1 year intervals, I mean, you can evaluate them accordingly. I mean, whether if it's a long-term goal, maybe you evaluate it at the 1 year mark. If it's a shorter-term goal, you evaluate at the 6 year mark. But rather than, I'm sorry, 6 months. 6 months, 6 years. But that way, you're not locked into you can keep it more generalized, and rather than be locked into a specific time period.
Okay.
But yes, they can always be modified and supplemented, and I think out of necessity they will be, because the objectives and goals of the city are going to be constantly changing and evolving.
Exactly. And I guess I'll repeat what I was saying earlier. These are all not to solve the problem or obtain the funding. It's basically to do the initial steps of familiarizing herself and council with what the issues are, what potential solutions are, and then the council gets to come along and say, pursue this, don't pursue this, based on that information. So. So do we need a definitive date? Do we need to say 6 months?
No, I don't think you need to say 6 months. I think you just need to outline the goals.
Okay. That's all. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so this is the vote on the amendment. Councilmember French.
Are we eliminating the 6 months from the resolution vote or not?
There wasn't any 6 months. I just asked him.
I said that.
Oh, you did?
You said that. That's what I was commenting on.
Oh, okay.
So we're striking that from, or are we not striking that?
Did I say that in my motion?
You did.
Okay, so let me remake my motion.
Okay.
If I could, Mayor.
Okay.
So I move that we approve the city manager goals as outlined by Mayor Brown for our city manager pursuant to the terms of her contract.
Is there a second?
Support.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, this is just an amendment for procedural purposes. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Okay, so we have the main motion amended to that. We'll do, if there's no further discussion, I just ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved the initial goal manager's goals. Future agenda items, I have two. I know there's a request for another budget study session before, on the calendar's going, on the 26th, which is a Monday, and then with, I guess, maybe a potential safety meeting on the 28th, because I know there were a number of council members who said Tuesdays and Thursdays would not work. So the tentative are the 26th at 6 o'clock and the Wednesday the 28th at 6 o'clock for budget sessions. So those are my two future agenda items. Attorney Harkness, Councilmember Brown, Councilmember French.
As the council's aware, we have to do our annual insurance opt-out. So I prepared a resolution that I'm going to send over to the manager this week, but we need to do that before the end of the year.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. For a future agenda item, if we could have a report regarding the recreational fund and what additional programming will be available in 2019, considering that we approved the millage, and I think the community is interested in knowing what additional programs will be available with that funding. Thank you.
Councilmember French.
We've not yet approved council rules for which we have spent much money. Are we waiting until the turnover on December 4th to do that? Or are we?
We are waiting for Attorney Smith.
Attorney Smith has been indisposed with apparently ill grandchildren?
Yes, and so once we get, hopefully, before, yes.
That'll be for the new membership to take on. Great.
Is there any, Councilman French?
I have another question. Are we saying that the 26th and the 28th will be budget meetings or full council meetings?
Budget at 6. There may be, depending on.
I will not be available on Wednesday, the 28th.
Okay.
I have
But
church, so.
you won't be voting on the budget, right? No. I don't think you'll be voting on the budget.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but if we're having a council meeting that's not a budget meeting,
No, that's a budget meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
Just
Councilman.
tell him I'm not going to be there.
Yeah,
so.
Councilman Reed.
I think from the conversation you and I had about my dates last week, I think you got it mixed up that Tuesdays and Thursdays was the day I could not be here. It was Tuesday through Saturday was the day I could not be there. So even in this week where you got the 26th and the 28th, I would prefer not a Wednesday. So if you wanted to make it some other days.
Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, in light of what Council members French and Reed have said, I'm wondering if we can have budget sessions on the 26th at 6 p.m. and the 27th at Tuesday
That'd be fine.
at 6 p.m.
Is there any other concern from council on that?
No.
Okay, so we'll do that to the 26th and 27th,
6 mostly.
6 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to have, okay. For the COLA, okay.
Oh,
So, yeah, I'm going to call, yes, we'll call a special meeting on the 27th, the 26th to do that. Because there has to be there's a public hearing that needs to happen. So, Councilmember French.
Can we start the council meeting at 7:30 instead of 7 to give our budget people an hour and a half to do stuff? I feel like we're going to get into some woolly, and if we're going to try to get budget sort of.
Well, here's how we'll solve it. It's a special meeting. We'll start it at 6, and we'll put the budget and the public hearing, everything is on the agenda, and just so there's no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll just do it that way.
Okay. That's cool.
Attorney Harkness.
I was just gonna say, if we were gonna start the regular session at a different time, we would have to change our thing, but
Special.
moot point.
Yeah.
We're good.
And we'll make sure that it's online and posted outside conspicuously. Are there any other future agenda items from council? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to motion to excuse absent council members. I think Mr. Barnes is on vacation. Okay. Is there a motion to excuse absent council members?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Okay. We've excused the absent council member. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council. We ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum. Please state your name and address. Are there any public comments this evening?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, everyone here and there. Boy, I had a real nice prepared statement for tonight, but you know what? I'm going to forego all that. I just want to say, Mr. French, thank you for your service and your time that you've been here.
Name and address.
And the manager.
Your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was known. Al Smith, 1209 East Adams, or 1209 Adams. Anyway, Mayor Brown, it's been a pleasure dealing with you, sir. We've had some back and forth, and I think I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I think we've learned a lot about each other, and I hope we can move forward as gentlemen in the future. Ms. Rufus, God love you, dear. Welcome. We all want to say welcome to you. I know there's been some hardships going on so far, but as I think I've said publicly many times, you're here to succeed. We're here to help you succeed. and we're all going to succeed together if we work at it. And that's the only way we'll do it. Other than that, I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving with your families.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Alicia Priami. I live at 310 East Michigan, Albion. I'm your local next door troublemaker. How's it going? All right, so you mentioned at the last city meeting, Ms. Rufus, that we have an increase in our water bills possibly due to a grant that's not going through. I wanted to clarify so that everybody understands what's going on.
You can under manager report. So this is a point of order.
Sorry.
The public comments are for, I don't know if I can stop the clock. They're for the public, and then the council and the manager respond.
Oh, okay,
So we
that's
don't-
how that works. Okay. Sorry about that. New to it. So that is my public comment. I'm just curious as to how all of that is going. And that's it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Polly Wilson, and I live at 606 West Erie Street in Albion. My concern is this streets is tearing up my car. It seemed like when I fix one thing, it's another one. These roads are terrible. Why is it here? It's just terrible. Y'all have money, because I just sit here and listen to it. So why's y'all putting the black car down in front of my, and it don't last? Mayor, what's going on here? Would somebody please tell me? I'm serious.
Mm-hmm. We're going to respond to comments after. Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening?
Alfreda Dysart Drake, 1016 South Superior Street. And I just want to take just a moment to, first of all, and I stand here as a mother and also a resident, and I do want to thank those in the community over the years who've been very supportive of Mayor Brown in the various positions from city council person to mayor. And I just want to thank you all in the community who have supported him, who've been there with encouragement. And just to say that, and it's interesting because when he graduated from college, I directed him, please don't come back this way. And I'm just going to be honest. I have to be honest because I've been here I'm 60 years old. I've been here for 53 years. And I've seen young people go away, and we tell them, go away, get your education, and come back. And it's just kind of bad how we treat them when they come back. I'm okay. But there has been, where I stand here, there's been a lot of negativity that's been in this spot, a lot of things that have been said, and the evil spiritness, and a lot of different things that have taken place here. And some of us have children, some of us have grandchildren, and I just hope that your children and grandchildren don't have to experience those kind of things that have been experienced in this community. And there have been a lot of senior people in this community that I thought so highly of, and I've just been blown away with some things that have happened. And I have to be honest because, believe me, there's been more negative things said, and I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just trying to say as a community here in Albion, if we're trying to move forward, we need to learn how to treat each other right. That should be the first thing. We need to learn how to treat each other right, and I think that's very important. And I've been here. I pay taxes. I've been involved in the community. I've taught my young people that I deal with to be community-minded. But it's just sad that when I teach them to do this and go out in the community to give it their time and their talents, then sometimes they are mistreated. And so I think as a community, again, I can't say it enough, we need to learn how to treat people. And our young people are going to go away and be in other communities and other colleges. They're going to learn new things. They're going to have different ways of thinking. We all do not think alike. We got Albion College right here in our community. Not one of those college students thinks alike. And they're going to go out into the world and go other places. And some of the very young people that we've rejected in this community, they've gone out and been great in other places. But they can't even come back in their own community and be great. and it's because of the adults who are doing the things they're doing. We need to realize we've done the things we need to do. Sometimes, at some point in time, we've got to let the young people come in and be a part of our community, because we're not going to always be here. Eventually, we will die, and someone's got to take over. And that's just point, I'm being frank. Someone's got to take over. We want people to be able to have the experience to come here and take over and do what needs to be done. So I hope that as we move forward, that we have a better way of treating our young people who go away, and we all tell them to come back, and they come back. We need to know how to have welcoming doors that are open to invite them to come back in.
No. Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening?
I stay at Broadway Projects, and I had my name's Annabelle Williams, and I stay at 12 West Broadway, Apartment 5. And I had called the police, and the police told me to call Ann, and then she told me to call the police. So it's too high call, and you had to complain.
Wait, what?
What was the question?
So, why did I call? I had to somebody came up there to stay up there, and they was deserting the peace. So I called the police. So she told me to call. They told me to call my landlord, and that's what I did. So the landlord told me to call them. So what should I do? And I pay rent there, so it's late at nighttime.
Is there any further public comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the city man. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Commissioner Tompkins.
Mr. Mayor, council members, City Manager Rufus, Clerk Domingo, residents of the City of Albion, and the folks watching this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your County Commissioner. It's always great to be with you folks each and every time I'm here. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to express my sincere appreciation of the residents of the 7th District who supported me in my re-election as your County Commissioner. Thank you. It's an honor, it truly is an honor to represent you each and every day. Thank you for continuing to show that support so that we ensure that we have a voice, a very strong voice representing the people of Albion at the County Commission level. So thank you very much. I do appreciate that. I do want to say before I get into my quick report, and I'll try to be very brief, Mr. Mayor, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I certainly wish you well in your future endeavors. Same would be true for Councilman French as well. I certainly appreciate all your service, certainly to the community of Albion, and wish you well in your future endeavors. It's been a pleasure, sir. To Councilmember Reed, congratulations on your re-election, absolutely as well. With that, all that being said, certainly looking forward to working with everybody as we move forward for the City of Albion. So certainly appreciate that. I just want to touch on something real quick that the mayor said regarding the countywide transportation plan. As a matter of fact, recently at a commissioners meeting, we did approve a third-party contract with Foursquare ITP for the development of a countywide transportation plan. I know it's been on a lot of people's minds over the last several months, and finally we've come to that point where we've found a third-party contractor to do the work. The plan is fully funded through an MDOT grant and with local partners, and unfortunately the estimated completion date is 12/31/19. So I know, myself as well, we've been talking about this for a number of months, but at least we're on the right track now, so hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that. So with that being said, I just want to take the opportunity to wish all of you, including everybody here, folks at home, and all of you a very happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you get an opportunity to enjoy your families. Sometimes politics is a crazy world, and it's sometimes nice to get away and enjoy your families. And again, I look forward to working with all of you collectively, not only everybody here, but the residents and further engagement and how I can work to do better for the City of Albion. So with that being said, again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So City Manager report.
Yes, at the last meeting, I did mention that our water rates had to be raised. I want to make this very clear. This is not something that Ms. Rufus decided. No, I want everybody to know, because there was, she's changing. What has happened is this. We had a SAW grant, and one of the reasons why we haven't been completing some of the things that we need to do because we don't have all the information from our SAW grant, and we are actually working toward obtaining the additional information needed to ensure that we have the proper water rates. When a water fund is not self-sustaining makes the city not be in compliance with what the state guidelines are. So right now, we're not in compliance because our water rates are not where they need to be for it to be self-sustaining. And I just want you all to know that I will be definitely working with the individuals that worked on this grant for us. I'm going to make sure that I continually update the community about what's going on and what it's going to be. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, our rate should have been raised in the city of Albion maybe 5 years ago. And so because that has not been done, there are some hardcore questions that, you know, hardcore answers and things that we're going to need to do to ensure that we're in compliance. So I do want to make sure that you all know that I'm working diligently to try to ensure that we are in compliance with any state laws and guidelines.
And if that does require a council vote, that would be...
It would, and if it requires a council vote, absolutely, it would definitely come to this board. I do want to say I hope that everyone has a great holiday and happy Thanksgiving. Thank you to, once again, to everybody who has supported me and helped me through this process. We had a staff meeting today, and we just kind of talked about all the things that we need to do to assist in moving the city forward. As you notice, you've seen some individuals from our department heads speak to you this evening. That's because I empower my staff. I allow them to do their jobs. And I rely heavily on them to do the things that they have been entrusted to do. And so if during my report or just during some of the agenda items you see other individuals besides myself speak, that's because I have to work in conjunction with every single one of the department heads that work for this city. The chief of police is just not the chief of police. He is the end-all, be-all, jack of all trades, put up the cameras, fix the internet, lock the doors, make sure we're safe, and I have to publicly say that. Chief Kip has done more than just be the chief of police. And I thank him for that, because you don't have a whole lot of police chiefs that's going to put up cameras and lock the doors and make sure everybody is safe. He does all those things, not just because he's a chief. He does it because he cares about this community and he cares about each and every one of us. And I appreciate that. Ms. Haley, she's very new. She's been here 4 or 5 months. She's smart. She's brilliant. She has a bright mind. And I plan to pour into her as much of this city manager's information I possibly can, because she does have a master's in public administration. She's a very smart individual. I trust her, and I'm really happy to be a mentor to her in this position. Ms. Domingo, I don't know what I ask. She'll do it. She'll just say, okay, fine, no problem. If we don't have an answer, we find an answer. And I appreciate that. Those are the kind of individuals you have working. And I'm going to put this out there so people can be very clear. Yes, I've had 2 individuals resign since I've been here, but one of them is now staying. So obviously I can't be that bad of a supervisor if somebody wants to stay. So know that I'm doing whatever I can to ensure that this city is moving forward in the manner in which it needs to move. And Mr. Phillips, he jumped into a position, and he is changing the morale in public works, and I'm thankful for him. Every last one of my department heads are doing their job. They are doing they're going above and beyond the call of duty. At the next meeting, I will make sure that Mr. Williams can provide the report for recreation so you'll have what you need. And just know that I have a lot of confidence in them, and they have a lot of confidence in me. We talk about everything. So know that anytime that we are going to be moving forward with any projects, any programs, we're coming as a team. We meet as a team. If you want to meet with one of our department heads, the procedure is you need to call me. My department heads aren't meeting with anybody without me, because that's not how we operate. You know, I have a friend, and he and his wife used to have this term where they say, we came together, we roll together. We roll together and we come together. When you see one of us, you're going to see another one of us. And that's just how it is, because that's how you build your team. And I'm going to keep building them up. I'm going to keep thanking them. I'm going to keep telling them how much I appreciate them, because I do. I don't know what happened before I got here, and really it is not my concern. My goal is to build the city and to build my team. And yes, Councilman French, I am going to have training. All of us are going to have training. We're going to have any training that we need to make sure that this city moves forward. And whatever I need to do to move this city forward is what I'm going to do. I may not always be available. I apologize. It's busy. And yes, we've uncovered some things. And I talked about this. I'm not going to put it all out there because it's things that we need to fix. It's a lot of things we need to fix. And I'm willing to do it. But I'll tell you this, each and every last one of the department heads that I name, and I hope and pray I didn't miss anybody today. And I meant to mention Deputy Chief Kern, too, because he's been involved in this process as well. Every single one of these individuals that I named today has been working beyond. And I don't just limit them to their particular area. No, I don't just limit Mr. Meade to finance. No, I don't limit Ms. Haley to being the deputy clerk or being the deputy treasurer or any of those things. You can't put limitations on success. You just can't. And we are going to be limitless. This team is. And that's how I plan to move forward. I pray that I have your support. But know that if there's any suggestions or ideas you have, put them in writing. Let me know. You may not get me right away. I have a mailbox here in City Hall. But I'm open to suggestions. So sometimes it's a little brutal, but we have to get these things done, and we have to move the city forward. And whatever I have to do, I'm committed to moving the city forward, and I hope to have your support in doing so. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any comments from council this evening? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the last official council meeting of my 8 years of service. And as my term at Albion City Council comes to an end, I am left with thoughts of accomplishments, of completed projects, progresses made, setbacks to progress, and ideas for moving our city forward. If we think back to 2010, Albion was a far different place than it is today. In 2010, we were struggling to deal with the impact of schools of choice, decreasing budgets at the school and the city level, leadership changes at our public schools, local businesses, families, and individuals struggling in the midst of the country's worst economic downturn since the Depression. In those 8 years, we saw the retirement of one city manager who had partnered with the city council for 15 years of service to accomplish great work and had laid the groundwork for the work that we do now, including a reestablishment of our city's general fund balance to healthy levels, cooperative and collaborative negotiation of labor contracts, and the results of that effort sees our retirement funds, as reported today by our treasurer, in fantastic shape, even as our staff levels have decreased over the years. One other accomplishment of Mike Herman was the purchase and holding of properties that allowed for the development of the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel downtown, years before any of us had an idea of a hotel in our downtown. Mike was able to help both the downtown and the council to think strategically, and we have tried to carry that forward since his retirement. Len Reed came to council with me in 2010 with an idea to revitalize Westward Park, Holland Park, and she worked with our city manager, Cheryl Mitchell, to get funding for the project, but also partnered with Albion College and Les Dick and many others in our community to bring about a transformation of a park into a showcase for our city and the civil rights movement in Albion. So, Len, I thank you for that. A hallmark of Cheryl Mitchell's leadership was the immediate establishment of relationships with all and any willing member of our city. She worked with much of the city to build a tremendous amount of goodwill. She was always willing to listen to ideas and to help get things done. I want to thank past members of the City Council that have had a profoundly positive impact on me and our city. To Betty Branch and to Ron Gant, thank you for your warmth, devotion to our city, and your willingness to teach me about engaging with people in my early years on council. Your hard work paved the way for much of the progress that is in Albion today. To Cheryl Krause, you were my rock on council, taking everything in, teaching me what was needed to do this job well. Your willingness to be a sounding board and confidant through the years prior to, during, and after your 12 years of service is greatly appreciated. To Andrew Zableski, I want to thank you for your work with me over the years. I've enjoyed watching your daughters grow and to see your family thrive in Albion. I appreciate sitting next to you at the council chambers and being able to learn from you about the ins and outs of the daily work that being on council requires. As has been said by many over the past 5 years in this community, the city of Albion is at a tipping point. Much progress has been made as Albion seeks to reimagine itself as a rising community in the 21st century. We see the results of that effort, but we are in a treacherous place in our history. If we disavow our partnerships, our collaboration, and returning to a place where silos are the norm and cooperation is rare, then we will absolutely fail to realize our full potential. If we bog ourselves down in minutia and not focus on the future, opportunities will absolutely pass us by. This council over the past 18 months has struggled to find common ground as individual agendas, attitudes, and foci have limited our effectiveness. I'm hopeful that in my absence, a greater focus on team building and visioning for a future of Albion, on leadership development and cooperative work can result in a better council and more progress moving forward. We have an excellent staff who have been with us through difficult and successful times. It is during this time that we have embraced their experience, looking to them as sources of wisdom and professionalism. So I want to take this final thought to Tom, to John, to Jill, Jim, Stacy, and Scott. I have always enjoyed our conversations, and I look forward to many more as a citizen of this city. And with that, I want to thank the current council, including our Mayor Garrett Brown and Councilwomen Brown, Spicer, and Lawler. Thank you for your work in these last 2 years. To Cullen, as always, thank you. To Jill and to LaTanya and to other city council members and leaders, I want to thank you for my time here, and I wish you all the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Is there any further comments from council? Okay, so I have a couple. There's an Albion Housing Commission meeting tomorrow morning at 11. So if for those who are in the public who'd want to attend that, that's 11 at the Charles Snyder Building. The 2018 Albion Aglow Parade is this Friday, November 30th from 5 p.m. To 9 p.m. So we want to make sure that we're supporting that. Yes, City Hall is going to be closed Thanksgiving Day and the day after. So just want to let the citizens know that. Regarding the street issue, I think that's something, I know there was a question from a resident about streets. That's an ongoing problem. In Michigan, we're working, and with something we're addressing. I know that what I would recommend is setting up a time to talk with the manager. If there's something with the patchwork that can be done closer to, your residents, maybe the city can come out and look at that. So I know that's something we've done on other streets. So if you could just stick around after, we'd appreciate that. One of the things, and then finally, my last official regular meeting is actually going to be December 3rd. So I'm going to have my remarks on my formal remarks to the citizens on December 3rd. But what I do want to do is just take a moment, and one of the words that came out of what I just heard that really, in all honesty, concerned me is that there's the word treacherous. And I would attribute my term, well, I'll put it this way. I have been all about Albion, and I think a majority of the council has been all about Albion. But I think what we're witnessing in some ways is the fraying of a community and the use of that fraying to distract residents from the real issues that are happening in the community, real anxieties about where they fit into the new Albion. And I think it's important that we discuss that. And one of the major instigators of that deterioration, that divisiveness, is a particular so-called news site on social media. It's called City Watch News, and I know Mr. Face runs that. And I've borne the brunt of a lot of that rumor, half-truths, outright lies, and I know that it's unfortunate, though, that for someone who has not been in our community for any more than 6 weeks, that she's had to tolerate that. And so I'm going to be very emphatic and strongly call out that divisive element in our community. There are those who have relied on that to successfully move forward a political agenda. And I don't see how you can build a community and build collaboration while being silent on the continuing lies. A couple of things that were pointed out, and I'm going to be just really frank because the truth is a defense, and I think ultimately the truth is the truth. A couple of things. There was a post that attempted to, well, I'll say it this way. In Albion, you cannot serve on the council and be in debt to the city. Part of the reason why we passed that resolution was to make sure that in previous years this has happened, to my knowledge, and we didn't want it to happen to other people again. It's unfair to point Councilmember-elect Brewer out as being delinquent in taxes and not to point out the other individual who was delinquent. I FOIA'd this morning a letter that was sent from our attorney to the two council members-elect. One, as we know, that City Watch publicized was for the council member-elect in Precinct 1, but neglected to cover the council member in Precinct 6. That's unfair. It's unethical. You cannot build a community on that divisiveness. Mr. Brewer is working to fix that and rectify that, and so is the council member-elect in Precinct 6. We cannot have alleged journalism that is not fair, that does not cover all the stories, does not get details, does not point out sources. It's unfair to our community. And the next council will not be successful, and our community will not be successful if we allow that to continue. I want to talk about the city manager amendment. Ms. Rufus made very clear that she was not asking for an increase in the amount of money that we assigned to her for moving expenses. She asked only that we extend the time because she was, and I don't even go into that. I'll leave that alone. Just to say that the narrative that's being put out there regarding her original initial residence in this community is not truthful. What is happening is Albion is that there are people who want, and I'll agree with this, and I'll echo Councilmember French. I applaud the former managers, but how our council manager form of government works is that the managers bring recommendations to the council, and we sort through them with the public will that we've been entrusted with, and we vote on those. So I'm proud of whether it was the purchase and the demolition of the old Albion Recorder building, the old Moose building. I was on council. We were on council when we approved those. So the ICMA points that out. The council has a role in that too, and so I'm proud of those votes. There's not one major vote that's taken place relative to development downtown or throughout this community that I have not supported. And the ones that I have not have been for specific reasons that concern me. We have to make sure, though, one of the things I'll point out is, and I think Councilmember Brown looked into this early in the year, is there was a request by a developer to enforce, strengthen enforcement of coding issues in the downtown. And Councilmember Brown FOIA'd information about the number of citations that had taken place. And it was only after that particular developer called that out that the number of cold citations went up drastically. The person ended up selling the building. So what we want to make sure is that we don't have one way of treating people on one side and another on the other side. And then to have social media misinformation that blinds us as a distraction from the real concerns and anxiety in our community. So like I said, I want to make that clear. Councilmember-elect Brewer was not the only person with issues, one. Two, the manager did not ask for any more money. She asked for an extension for the time to report her receipts back. And then the final one was very disturbing and long, but we're going to address it. So we hired a city manager this year. No one on the council knew her, had no personal relationships, and it's frankly a lie what was put in the City Watch News regarding me having any contact with my family or anything with the city manager. It's not true. What's concerning is there was and some of the things, if we fact check and critical thinking, some things can be found out. There was a comment in the post that said the consultant we hired to do the job posting recommended 3 or 4 candidates. No, there were 27 applicants. There were 10 people who the search consultant brung to our attention. That's a clear error. So I don't know who's giving. I have my suspicions about where that information is coming from, whether it's from elected officials, whether it's from certain people in the community, but it has to stop. And whether or not I'm an officer or not, that doesn't matter. I think the truth needs to be known, and it has to stop because we cannot move forward with lies and dishonesty on social media. One of the things that I'd also add, I'm going to wrap it up because I don't want to labor the public tonight. The manager that we have right now is handling issues that previous administrations and councils did not undertake to fix. Albion at its high point was 14,000 people, lots of factories. We've had deindustrialization. We've had our largest employer, the college, has survived. But what's happened is the deindustrialization and the decline of the community at a certain point is going to impact our largest employer. So what the college has done is really taken an effort to really encourage development. And there's nothing negative about that. I think there are success stories in our community with the saving of the bone. But what we have to do moving forward is making sure that we don't have the hijacking of our government by certain specific interests to the detriment of the entire community. And whether I'm up here or out there, I'm going to continue to talk about that and making sure that things are done in an equitable manner. So I ask Mr. Face, please stop it. It's unfair to our future leaders in this community. It's unfair to previous leaders in the community. It's unfair to our new manager who is new here for 6 weeks. It has to stop. It has to stop. So when you read that, ask yourself, who's the source? Can it be trusted? In one of the articles, there was a reference to information about scoring. If that were true, which I can say, I can't talk about closed session, but I could say that that's not true. If it were true, the question would be asked, who was in closed session to share that with that news source? Violating state law, if it were true. So we have to move forward. This is not an attack, but it's a plea for sanity in this community. There are many people who comment who are neighbors, former teachers of mine, lots of things. And I love this community, and I hate to see that division tear us apart. Please, stop it. Thank you. Is there any further comments from council? If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Thank you.